Hello everyone, Gaze here. So I want to do a video on deregulation, more of like, I've been noticing that I think people forget that business itself is generally totalitarian, so therefore deregulation is kind of anti-democratic. Talking about like extreme deregulation is anti-democratic. So let me get into this here. Have a file I need to pull up. So businesses, right? If you deregulate everything, so what happens is generally then in the current society, a business would generally take over the role and run the economy without the interference of government. The problem with that is, well, one, we've already kind of done that and it had some issues. Two, businesses are not democratic. If you ever worked for a company, then you likely know that you don't get to make a decision on how the business is run. You don't get a choice. So it's not at all democratic. And so if you deregulate, then the only institution you have that's really working in society is a business, which is a totalitarian organization. So then it's anti very anti-democratic when you don't have regulation to make things democratic. Um, so in a business, right, you have the board, the CEOs. You could probably make a democratic business. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that. There might be like some fringe cases. Uh, that'd be a bit complicated, but generally, as most of us know, businesses are not democratic institutions for the most part. Uh, so we already did this back in the day with like during the time of like say Rockefeller and stuff in America. So that what happened then is you had what was it? You had like Standard Oil and the steel business going on, the railway business, and those people, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, who made a lot of money. And according to some estimates I've read online, they became a lot richer than what the rich people are today because there were less protections on uh, monopolies and stuff like that, and also less protection for workers. So that's why, like back then, I mean, you didn't really have any like workers' benefits too much. You didn't have a lot of protection. So that's why unions became a big thing back then. Probably most people these days haven't really unions haven't been big in a while, but they used to be because well, the government wasn't really interfering with the businesses, so workers didn't have any freedom to choose their conditions, and so they didn't get paid a lot. They didn't have any benefits. I mean, maybe some businesses had benefits, but generally, it was not a good scenario for the worker. That's why you had a huge surge of unions, and you had. I there was that one instance where I forget who it was, but where where the business hired guards. It was one of the rich, the Rockefellers or Carnegies. I forget who it was, but they hired some gunsmen, some what do you call it, bodyguards? Not really bodyguards, but because there were rioters, having or a union gathering or rioters in the business, and people died and stuff because there wasn't there just wasn't a lot of government interference back then. So the businesses took matters into their own hands without like too much interference, and then people died, and then the kind of whole spurred the whole union and more regulation thing, along with the spur of the what do you call it, the monopoly rules. So, for example, monopoly rules is the idea of regulation. The monopoly protection is regulation. If you and it protects democracy because when you have a monopoly, that it makes the business in the monopoly, it allows them to not allow competition. And when you don't allow that, you don't have choice. So it's less. If democratic is about freedom and choice, then monopolies are anti-democratic because they disallow choice among choice and freedom of your place to work or whatever goods and services is being monopolized. So that's why we have that regulation to protect democracy, to protect freedom of choice. And something that happened recently, I'm sure you've all heard about, is that the recent thing of a deregulation of internet privacy. Uh, from what I wasn't quite sure. From what I read, so let me get into it first. The what happened was there was just some overturning of regulation recently by Trump administration, or was it, or the Congress or something like that. And it was overturning of regulation that prevented internet service providers from selling your browsing history without your permission. I read that they hadn't, that the rules hadn't actually gone into effect yet or not. So it's either they either deregulated the protections or they deregulated the protections from coming into effect. So I'm not sure if they were actually in effect yet, but they were going to be. So I'm not sure about that, but we all know that they did the ruling to overturn those protections. That's kind of the same reason. This is another like undemocratic, anti-democratic example of deregulation, because if democracy is about choice, and this deregulation allows internet service providers to sell your information without your permission, without your choice, well, that's not really democratic because you don't have a choice. And you could say, someone pro free market, super extreme free market would say, oh well, you could just choose a different internet service provider that doesn't sell your internet history. You can't really do that. It's the problem. As most people know, in your era, you maybe have one or two cable and internet providers, and the problem with it, and also the problem is, the average consumer has. How do you really know? The average consumer with their average technical skill doesn't really know if the internet service provider is selling their information or not. No one generally has the way to find that out. So if a internet service provider says they don't, but you don't really know if they don't without. I mean, even with extreme technical skill, it might be difficult to find out if your service provider is selling your browsing history or not, because it goes, when you search for anything on the internet and you're not using a VPN, it goes directly to the servers of your internet service provider, and which, of course, they can see a lot of your information from there. And governments have requested information. They use spying that way. They request information from the internet service provider, and without the regulation to control them, like selling that information, then you don't have a choice, and you can't go to another internet. There's no, I mean, at least there's no internet service provider that's even like advertising, we don't sell your information. I've never heard of an internet service provider saying that as a selling point, and I doubt they will, because there's very few internet service providers, and they likely would all like come into agreement that they're probably not going to try to undercut each other on this issue, and probably hurt their profits anyways more than they would get from marketing that they don't sell your information. So regulating that would promote democracy, promote choice, because if you put a ruling that says, okay, yeah, they could sell your information, but they have to allow you the choice to. Now that's democratic. So normally, if there was a ruling that said, okay, yeah, they can sell your information, but you have to like click something and sign an agreement that's like super explicit, like it's not hidden, that says, hey, can we sell your information? And then if you want to say yeah, then you can say yeah, but it's a choice. Right now, we don't have a choice, according to the ruling that's out. So it's lots of rules like that are you're going to be seeing over the next 4 years, and and things like this that have already happened, where it's going to restrict your freedom because businesses are totalitarian. Therefore, you don't have a choice. And unless a business offers a different choice, then, well, you don't get one. So, I think people forget about that. I think people forget that. They think, oh, deregulation, the government's controlling my choices. That's not freedom. but it's actually, you need it because with it's not freedom without it. Because if businesses were democratic in nature, okay, then fine, but they're not, and so we know it doesn't work. You have to have a democratic overarching institution to promote democracy and regulate totalitarian business institutions, regulate them so you have democracy. So I hope that was informative, and good luck to everyone. I'll see you later. Bye.